Oh, how are we, lads?
Nick, I think that you need to do that one more time just because of a TikTok that I did last night. I actually, oh, that got loud. What just happened there?
Yeah.
He
Oh,
got that into him. Mate, I'll tell you what, you got to do an entrance to this. Last night, I put up a TikTok and I actually hummed this exact theme song. Your theme song was hummed. This is me doing it. I want you to walk in. Get up. I want you to walk into this. You ready?
all right, I'll do it. Right, go on.
Let's do it. I'll 3, 2, 1 you. This will be funny as. Are we ready?
All right, go on.
3, 2, 1.
How are we, lads?
Oh, bro, how good is it?
You are an idiot.
I
Unbelievable.
wonder who thought of it.
I don't know whose idea that was. That's hilarious. Get out to the chat. Hope you're well on this what are we, Monday night, 7:37 p.m. Get out to the chat. We got BKR Sports in the chat. Oh boy, the big guns are out tonight. How you going, BKR in the chat?
That Blaze there, yum.
Everyone's going berserk. The chat's going off. Absolutely going off. So, guys, tonight we're going to meet and entertain us. We're going to do our 2021 season review. Obviously, the finals begin this weekend. So we thought, I thought, and I invited entertain us on to do this with me, go through each team's season one by one. Regular season's over. Finals is a whole new competition now. So I thought, why not? We'll review each team. We'll talk about who their best player was, who their worst player was. We'll give them a rating out of 10, with 10 being great, 5 being just a pass mark, and below that being a bit of a fail. But Entertain House, how you going, bro?
Yeah, going good, man. Work today. I'm working every second day at the moment. So had dinner, which is good.
Yep.
And I got some chippies here in case I get hungry. I saw you have your Coke. It's your snack.
Yeah, I just scolded literally on camera, but it'll be right. I don't need
That's
it.
what I did last night to stay awake for the classic Super League game between Wigan
mate, I'm so tired
and
from it.
Warrington.
Yeah, that was a great game, bro. I really enjoyed that game. I'm so tired from it because I watched the whole KR game as well. I saw the first half of it and then I went to sleep. So I went to sleep about 4 a.m., woke up about 7 a.m., went to work. Mate, 3 hours sleep, I'm wrecked. But I want to do this stream and the show goes on no matter what. So let's get into it. So make sure you guys, if you're new, hit that subscribe button. What are you waiting for? You're not going to regret it. And make sure you go and check out Entertain Us' channel. The road to 4K, I believe.
Yeah, we're getting. We'll start the road to 4K tonight. I guess we hit 3,000 a few weeks ago, so 3,055. So 55 subscribers in 3 weeks. Really nice effort, considering I only upload for my tips, but plenty of content coming up during finals and especially during the off season for everyone as well.
Cannot wait for the finals. Obviously, my team isn't there this year, unfortunately. So hopefully, everyone's team that's in it can go very well. But let's get into it. So we'll go from 16 to 1. Let's talk about the ball. Let's talk about the Bulldogs. They finished last this year. Wooden Spooners. They had a record of 3 wins, 21 losses. What do you think of the Bulldogs season?
It was pretty bad. I think that early on in the season, there was 3 or 4 games. I think it was 3 games in a row where the Bulldogs were kept to nil, and you could see that something was wrong with the side. It was the first time a side had been kept to nil since, I think, the 1930s for that many consecutive weeks. So a lot of worries there. Look, I think there is definitely some young talent that was coming through. Whether they're contracted next year, that's a different story because they're going to get Burton, you're going to have Addo Carr. So players like Aaron Swap, I think, really coming through, looking nicely. Jake Averillo, there's no way he's not in the starting side, in my opinion. He's fantastic to watch, probably one of their best players of the season. But for Bulldogs fans, really disappointing season, especially for a team that had these new recruits, Corey Allen, Nick Kotrick. I just want to say I love Nick Kotrick as a player. Really backwards season. Really disappointing. I don't think he got enough ball. I don't think he's got the players around him anymore. But are we giving a? So we're going out of 10?
Yeah. What would you give that year out of 10?
Look, I think it's unfair to give him anything lower than a 3. So it's close to a 3. I'm going to go with a 4.
Yeah.
It's a 3 to a 4 for me. I still think they had their moments. They won a good game against the Sharks. Big upset against the Dragons. I was at that game. How did they win that game? Their defense was outstanding, but not the greatest season for Canterbury fans.
It was a disappointing year. 3 wins for the Dogs isn't good, and obviously Trent Barrett's first year as well, which it was always going to be hard for Trent Barrett. And Nick Kotrick, it did have a backward season, but I think a lot of people predicted that to happen because the Bulldogs roster going into this year was not the best. I think most people had the Bulldogs outside the top 8. I don't think anyone had them for the wooden spoon. I know everyone was picking them to be around that 10th to 13th position. I don't think everyone had it. I think I had them about 10th or 11th as well. But disappointing year for the Dogs. I would probably give their season probably a 3 out of 10. They were terrible. Just a disappointing year for the Dogs. Mate, who would you say was the Bulldogs' best player?
I think Jake Averillo. I think that their forwards, I think there were some good forwards that came through. Like I think one player that could be in contention, he just didn't get enough game time. Renar Fatoni, really strong season. I think is he off to the Super League? I don't think he re-signed.
Yeah, he's going to the Roosters, I think. Roosters.
Oh, Roosters, really good signing, good pick up there. But I think Jake Averillo had a really outstanding season and stepped up. I think Nick Meaney had a good season, but I think he wasn't good in enough games, and we need to see more of him, which we probably will see under Bellamy. So I'll probably lock in Jake Averillo.
I'll probably go with Luke Thompson. I thought he was probably the Dogs' best forward all year. I know he had a few suspensions, but everyone knows how highly I rate Luke Thompson, and I thought he had a really good year in a really poor side. And Averillo is also he had a really good year. He'll definitely be in the starting side somewhere next year. Who do you reckon was their worst player?
I don't know if he's their worst player, but I think Dylan Napa probably definitely underperformed.
Yeah,
you could see that with multiple games being dropped and things. So I guess you could say him. Yeah. I personally expected more from Adam Elliott. I think he's a decent enough player, but I think this season he was pretty quiet for the most part. He did get clouded by injury in those final few weeks, though.
I'm going to go with Kyle Flanagan. I know that's a bit harsh, but he's the halfback. He went from the Roosters to the Dogs, expected to do something at that club. He's been struggling. He struggled himself very, very hard, and there was reasons why he got dropped. So I'm going to say Kyle Flanagan was our worst player. I hope next year, if he's still at the Dogs, I hope he comes out and has a big year. I really do. Before we move on from the Dogs, what would you say was their best win and their worst result? The best win of the year for them, only won 3 games, and their worst result?
Oh, well, their worst result has to be Manly whooping them 66-0. Everyone saw Manly winning that game, but 66-0, absolutely outrageous. As for their best result, I think their defense against the Dragons was good, but I mean, I was at both the games that they did win besides that game yesterday. And I think that their game against the Sharks was really, really good. No one expected it either. It was their first win of the season. They knew how to play their defense. They let the Sharks back into it. But I think even though they won a bigger margin against the Dragons, I think they've had a better performance against Cronulla at Cogra earlier in the season.
I'm with you. Worst loss, Manly. Best win, I reckon the game on the Queen's birthday against the Dragons. I think that was their best win. They were incredible that day. And the Dogs, they're building, and I guess next year we'll see how they go. But let's move on to the Cowboys. They finished 15th. My team, good Lord. 7 wins, 17 losses. Just a miserable season. It seemed like when they lost Michael Morgan to retirement, they were just absolutely lost. They had a terrible year. Mate, what do you think of the Cowboys year? What would you rate it?
Yeah, I'm really disappointed in the Cowboys. I think they started the year on a really high note with multiple wins in a row. I'm just trying to remember. I think the Cowboys beat I went to the game, Cowboys and Warriors, when Cowboys had all those wins in a row. Did they won that game, didn't they?
No, we lost to, I think it was like 4 points.
Oh, okay. I thought you beat them. I thought I was there for you to beat them.
We did beat them by 1 later in the year, but...
Later in the year.
I think at the start of the year, we were 0-4, and then we won like 3 in a row or something.
Yeah, well, they were easily. I mean, it was questionable, but they were in top 8 contention. They were in top 8 territory. It was really early in the season to tell, but things were looking better compared to the doom and gloom that's been there. Definitely been clouded by injury this season. You can't fault their performances with players stepping up in those injured roles. They had Val Holmes out. They had Hamiso Tebuafadao out. I think Kyle Felt was out for a few games, maybe 2 or 3 for the year. So, look, there was definitely some injuries, but I didn't expect much from the Cowboys personally. I think I had them around 13th, 14th. I didn't expect this type of result being this close to the end and then bombing pretty much every game. But nice to get a win against the Dragons, first win in quite a while, but I think it's a pretty poor season overall, especially with the defensive efforts, especially that game against the Tigers. That showed me how bad. And the game against the Sharks. Yeah. The game against the Sharks at Cogra. Before that, Bulldogs and was it Sharks?
Right. No. Who was it?
No, Raiders, before Titans and Raiders. Before Titans and Raiders. That was a horrible defensive effort. So their defense needs a lot of work.
Mate, they were terrible. What would you rate them out of 10? It has to be a low rating.
It's pretty low for me. I think it's pretty on par with the Bulldogs. I think if you go... Look, I reckon it's 4. I reckon if you go back to the start half of the season where they're winning these games, securing that top 8 spot, players competing to their potential. Scott Drinkwater, I love him as a player. Did he step up and perform enough this season? Absolutely not, in my opinion. You need to have players that step up and perform. One of those players, and I think maybe their best of the year, who has been consistent in try scoring for years, was Kyle Felt. Some of the tries he scored this year are phenomenal. He was tackled, he puts his arm out, puts the ball over the line. His effort week in, week out, and to be there for almost every game this season, I think he missed 2 or 3, as I mentioned. I think Kyle Felt was one of their best players. They had the good thing about the Cowboys is the rookies. Hylam Lukey, spot on season.
Griffin Name, he was another one.
Yeah,
there's a few. A lot of good ones. Look, I had high expectations for the Cowboys. I thought they could have been around that 8th position. Halfway mark, they were in the 8th. And then they got rid of Jake Clifford and they fell off a cliff. They had new combinations, which you can't be doing at the halfway mark of the year. If you're in the 8 at the halfway mark, you should be keeping what you got. But they got rid of Clifford. They bought in Tom Din. It took forever to combine with Drinkwater. I still think they don't gel together whatsoever. I'm going to give the Cowboys season a 3 out of 10. Really disappointed. They were poor. I expected a lot better from the Cowboys. They had a couple of good things go their way. Look, their best player for mine, it's very hard to pick a good player because there wasn't many for the Cowboys that were great. But if I had to pick someone who was our best, I have to go with Reece Robson. I think he was our best player. I thought he was outstanding. Our worst player, I'm going to go with Valentine Holmes. So disappointing. $1 million a season. Can't defend at fullback. Can't organise the defensive line. Val Holmes was absolutely shocking this year. And Robson was our best player, I think. And, I think a 3 out of 10 is fair for the Cowboys. I could go lower. I really could. But such a disappointing year. And I know they've got all the injuries. I understand that. But look at the Roosters. 80% of the salary cap is injured and retired, and they're still winning games. And their depth gets tested, and it just goes to show the coach. And the way Todd Payton used Jason Tamalolo this year, in my opinion, just was completely unacceptable. So, disappointing year for the Cowboys. Really disappointing. What would you say was their best win?
I'd have to go through. Off the top of my head, I can't particularly think. I'm just going to have a look at the draw.
The Cowboys won in spectacular fashion.
I'm just having a look at the draw now.
Yep.
I would say the win against Leichhardt means nothing. I would say their win against Canberra. I think their win against Canberra, 26-24. No one expected that coming. They went in as underdogs. They won the game by 2, came back from behind. I think their game against Canberra in round 7.
7.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Canberra led 24-6 in that game as well, so they had a really good lead. But
Half time was 24-12. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's a good one. I think the Cowboys' best win for the year for me. I reckon the game against the Warriors where they beat them 29-28. Val Holmes kicked a field goal like 38 meters out or something. But yeah, I think that was their best win. I'd say the worst result for us has been, there was a few of them.
I think it's the 48-10 against the Sharks in round 4.
There
were some pretty bad score lines throughout the season. You led Manly 10-0, I think, was it?
That was disgusting.
You led Manly 10-0 and lost 50-18. You can mention that one, but I think that game is the tip of the iceberg.
I reckon the one against the Gold Coast back in round 3 was pretty bad. 44-8 at Townsville. That was pretty bad. Considering at the time, the Cowboys were just, obviously they were without Tamalolo, but losing 44-8 in Townsville, just, brutal. I'll say that was the worst result, but Cowboys, they got a lot to work on going into next year, and it'll be interesting to see how they go. Let's move on to the next side. I finished in 14th position. Same record as the Cowboys, 7 wins and 17 losses. The Brisbane Broncos. They had a pretty competitive back end of the year, but their whole year overall was pretty mediocre for mine.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Definitely a good back end of the year. I can't give them too high of a rating, but I do have a lot of things to say that are positive about them. Yeah. I'm going to give them a 5.5. I think 5.5. I think they get over the top of those teams by a point. And I think you've got to give them half a point just because of the effort. Kind of reminded me of the Bulldogs being the giant killers a few years back. Big things about the Broncos. There was multiple weeks where they were just scoring 6 points against like Rabbits, against Storm early on in the season. They competed against Penrith, 20 points to 12. I would say that was one of their better performances of the year, even though they lost by 8. They were flogged by Manly at Magic Round, really embarrassing result. But I think that win against the Sharks in round 16 really turned their confidence around. They may not have won every game since then, but bit of a smoky towards an Origin jersey potentially to come out of the Brisbane Broncos. TC Rabadi. What a season for young TC Rabadi. They had a lot of talent come through. Selwyn Cobbo as well, but TC Rabadi had an outstanding season. I think their low highlight was against the West Tigers where they led 18-10 and ended up losing that game by 20 points. So
I was just having a look at the draw, and the Broncos lost 8 games this year by 1-12 margins. And I reckon 6 of those games would have been because they did not have the creativity in the halves. Next year, they get Adam Reynolds, who's very good at finishing off those really tight games. They lost 8 games out of 25 rounds, 1-12. So you turn that around with a recognised halfback like Adam Reynolds, and things can only get better. But look, I think they were disappointing. They changed that halves every goddamn week, which doesn't help. I don't understand what Kevin Walters was doing there. Look, I'm going to give their rating a bit low. It was disappointing. They obviously avoided the wooden spoon, but not by a whole lot. I'll give their year a 3.5 out of 10, 3.5. Look, they still 7 games out of 25 still is quite poor. But when you think about it, to make the top 8 this year, all you had to do was win 10 games. So they were only 3 games out of the 8, really. And like I said, 8 games losing 1-12, that makes it a bit more confident for them going into next year. But disappointing year for the Broncos. They had a few good results go their way. I'd say their best result was probably the one against the Gold Coast where they came back 22-0. That was absolutely
a great game for them, I
was sitting there watching them going, Titans 22-0, the game over. It's all over. And then they came back and everyone was in shock. Their worst result for the Broncos, I would have to say probably the one at Magic Round, like you said. We were there at Magic Round and it was a Tom Trbojevic show, which was pretty much how it's been all
Tom
year.
Trbojevic show all season,
Yeah, pretty much.
Which episode?
Yeah, which one? Yeah. Look, I thought the Broncos back in the year they were competitive, but I think their year was a bit of a mediocre. So 3.5 for me. Worst performance, Magic Round, best game against the Gold Coast where they came back. Mate, who would you say was their best player?
I think Payne Haas really stood up this year. I think most years you can say how good he's been, but I think this year really he didn't score many tries. I think he scored 1 or 2 tries all season.
Yeah.
And I think in that back half of the year is where he really stood up as well. But I think he had a really good season. I also thought their mid-season recruit, Albert Kelly, who's obviously played a lot of rugby league, come back from the Super League. I think he had a really, really good season as well. So I'd say it's between those two.
Yeah, I'd probably go Payne Haas as well. Also, I think Herbie Farnworth is another one that needs to get mentioned. He was very good for the Broncos this year. He had a big job to fill with Tony Staves being injured a bit. But, mate, who would you say their worst player was? There is a few you could probably name, but who would you say was their worst?
It's hard because I want to say Anthony Milford, but he proved me wrong in the last 2-3 weeks. So I don't know. I think that their team efforts in a lot of games weren't great. I'm trying to look at their lineup now who would you say?
I'm going Brodie Croft. He was shocking.
He didn't have enough game time for me though.
When he did play, he was awful. Look, I like Brodie Croft. He's going to Salford, my team in the Super League. So now I've got to put up with it. But I thought he was really ordinary. I think another one is Xavier Coates. He didn't do a whole lot because he's going to Melbourne next year. But I'd say Brodie Croft was pretty poor, and Jermaine Asako wasn't at his best, I don't reckon. He was a bit poor.
Turpin was pretty off this year. Turpin's had a really solid 2 years at Brisbane. So I wasn't too impressed by Turpin. I guess you could chuck him. I'd say between Turpin and Milford for mine personally, because I go off getting all that game time all year,
Yeah, no, that's fair. But look, the Broncos, they get Reynolds next year. They should be a lot better than where they are this year. Like I said, losing 8 games, 1-12. One game they were ripped off in against the Roosters a couple of weeks ago, as I'm sure we're all aware of. I tackled my ass. But, disappointing year for the Broncos, and I guess the only way is up for them. Let's move on to the other team that finished in the bottom 4 this year. 13th place, 8 wins, 16 losses. This team really, I really don't know where to begin. This team is very frustrating. I want this team to do well, but they just seem to stuff it up all the time. The West Tigers, what an abysmal year they had again. Awful. What do you think about their year?
This is one of the worst years in their club, considering they had all this hype around, we can do it, we can play final, we're recruiting what we consider as a star centre in Joey Leilua, who was obviously out of form and dropped multiple times. I mean, it was later in the season, but to have that Tales from Tiger Town documentary showing the spirit that they're fighting towards finals and everything, I never for a chance thought they were going to make final. I always had this team going bottom 4. I had them around 15th position, so I was pretty damn close, but the Tigers are so hot and cold. They had some decent games this year, and then they had some games where they were blown out. Now, I thought Parramatta were a little bit off in round 4, and I think the Tigers played pretty well against us in round 4. That Easter Monday clash was really, really good. Disappointing for them with both 4 to 6 point losses for their Tommy Rodonigus games. They should have gotten up for at least one of those games. That was dreadful. Luke Brooks has been shopped around at the club, and I can see why. He goes close to being their worst player of the year. Look, there were some good moments for the club, beating the Dragons 34-18 in round 12. Not getting beaten by the Storm 66-16. It was 40-0 at halftime. I thought that game between the Sharks and Cowboys 36-6. I thought that would have been the highest scoring game at halftime all year, but I was wrong. The Tigers said, hold my beer. It's my turn. And then the loss against the Bulldogs yesterday. There was no effort, no heart. But let me just say this, and I tip the Bulldogs for this reason. The Tigers have never won a game without Adam Dewey.
What? I did not know that. Really?
Yeah, I think they've played 7 games without him, and they've never won a game without Adam Dewey. So that's why look, shit season. And the Tommy Rodonigas thing, I still can't believe it.
Yeah. Look, I like the Tigers. I want them to do well, but my God, it was a diabolical season. I'm pretty sure at the start of the year, Joey Leilua declared himself the best centre in the game or something. Absolute idiot. He'd be lucky to get a club now. Very lucky to get a club.
I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say this here, and I know a lot of people commenting will disagree with me, and if you're watching BKR, I'm going to bring it up again. He's told me not to bring it up again, but I'm going to do it. At the start of the year, me and BKR did rating NRL players going into this season. Now, I disagree with him saying that Joey Leilua is good. I said he's not that great. And he said, we can't do this to him. I said, look, if he wins Dally M Centre of the Year or something, tell me I'm wrong. But if he has a crap year, which I'm predicting him to have, then tell me that I'm right. And here I am. He's dropped all year, left out of the squad, and I know it's silly to go back to something so old, but Joey Leilua, do not declare yourself best centre in the game ever again.
Yeah, it was so poor, and he's got it. He's got all the attributes to be a great centre. I just don't know what's happened to him. Maybe leaving Canberra and that hard toughness, maybe he just went on the rails a little bit. But man, the Tigers, I don't know what's wrong with them. They've got so many good things down there. They've got Leichhardt Oval. They've got Campbelltown. They've got a great facility. They've got all sorts of good things going for them, and they just can't seem to get it right. They were terrible this year, and I'm going to give their season a 3.5 out of 10 as well. Same as the Cowboys, just so poor. And, you know, I think 3.
I'm going to go 4.
Yeah, 4's fair. Look, they were god-awful, man. Luke Brooks, again, he just hasn't got that consistency. Look, obviously, their worst loss was obviously the game against Melbourne, but I'll say another one as well was the one against the Cowboys at Leichhardt. My God. They had everything to play for. The Cowboys hadn't won there since the year 2000. They lost at Leichhardt against the Cowboys, and it was Tommy Rodonigas' day, and such a bad year. Next year, they get Jackson Hastings and Oliver Gildard from Wigan, but they're great buys, but they're going to need a lot more than that to get going. I think next year, the Tigers start as wooden spoon favourites. I really do. I know that might be a bit harsh and a bit early to say, but I think the Tigers start next year as wooden spoon favourites. And Michael Maguire, I'll be surprised if he's there next year.
It's funny because a few of us for the last couple of years have gone Titans and Bulldogs as our picks for wooden spoons. And look, they eventually got them, not that year, but the following year. And I think you might have had Tigers in 16th as last year. Yeah. So look, there you go. Maybe it's an omen that the West Tigers will be handed that spoon next year.
I wish them all the best. I want them to do well, but this year was diabolical. Mate, obviously their worst player, I'm going to go with Luke Brooks. He was just, and Joe.
I have to agree.
Who do you reckon was their best? Adam Dewey?
Look, Adam Dewey had a fantastic season. He's definitely right up there, but I'm going to go Stefano Utuikamanu. Yes. He's up there with buy of the year. I think Isaiah Papali'i probably takes it from him. For the West Tigers to struggle so much, for him to make over 100 metres per game, to go from the bench to starting against players like Thomas McKaylee, I think Alex Twal started most games. He was at lock. But a few of the Tigers forwards, he got the spot over. And he was 18th man in Origin. Let's not forget that. So yes. I think Stefano Utuikamanu is one of my favourite players to watch at the moment.
Stefano deserves a good rap, and I'm glad you gave it to him. I'm going to give it to Dane Laurie. He was outstanding. Incredible season. And also, another one I want to give a rap to, who I thought played well. I'm really starting to become a big fan of this bloke. Tommy Talau. Absolute weapon. Ever since he's gone to the centres, he's become a better player. So Tigers, I wish he's all the best next year, but my God, this year was a joke. And I'll be surprised if Madge is there. Look, I don't think it's all Madge's fault, but I think he's going to get the axe. But I hope not, because I think he's a great coach. But let's move on from the Tigers. They had a shocker. 12th place. The unpredictable Warriors. Boy, oh boy. They have every reason to be bad. They have every reason to it. I understand it. They had a record of 8 wins and 16 losses. They missed the finals by 2 games. Mate, what do you think of the Warriors season?
I was so high on the Warriors. At the start of the year, I was the opposite. I was all over the Gold Coast, and I started to get proved wrong with the Warriors winning games. And when they beat Canberra, and I think it's one of their best wins of the year, when they beat Canberra in round 3, and there was the Roger Tuivasa-Sheck tackle on Jordan Rapana, I think it was.
Yep,
one of their best moments of the year. I really hope that gets made in. They do like these magic moments for NRL cards. I really hope that gets made into a moment. They had that shock loss against Manly. I tipped Manly to get their first win of the season in round 5. So, look, there were some up and down moments. I actually think they had a good season overall. I think if you're going off their whole season, I know that they were expected to finish around 9th, 10th and play finals footy. Ben Murdoch-Marcilla, Jazz Tavaga, Adam Fanua-Blake. Who else was there? Plenty of injuries to this side throughout the year. So, look, I don't think they were good enough to play finals in the end, which we saw that result. But at the same time, I think it's a bit harsh to give them around the 3-4. So, yeah. I would say they are a bit better than the Broncos. Yeah. So I'm going to give the Warriors a 6 out of 10 based on the entire season.
Yeah, look, I think obviously, again, a new coach, Nathan Brown, and the Warriors, again, away from New Zealand, which was obviously very difficult for them. The captain, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, leaving early. I think it was the last 5 rounds or something he left to go back early before the borders got all strict and whatnot. But they lost so many tight games, and it comes down to the halves. And next year they do get Sean Johnson, which is going to be a quality signing. I think the development of Reece Walsh, Sean Johnson, Harris Tavita in that spine will get better. Again, more young players like Rocco Berry to get better. Murdoch-Marcilla's injury was big, I reckon. He was playing some really good footy. And if you're looking at buys of the year, he'd have to be in the top 5 buys of the year. I thought he was outstanding. I know the last 2 months of the year he probably wasn't at his best, but if the whole year I thought he played really well in the back row. But the Warriors, I think they're on the up. Or if you can believe in them, because they're so unpredictable. But decent year from them. I don't think anyone had them in the 8. I had them about, I think, where they finished. So I'll give the Warriors a 4.5. Not a 5, just a 4.5, almost a 5, but they're getting better. If they can just fix their defense, then I think they can do some really good things. But I'll give them a 4.5 for this year, mate. Who would you say was their best player?
Oh, I think Reece Walsh would be pretty damn close, if not be the pick. Yep. Ben Murdoch-Marcilla, obviously, didn't get to play the last couple of rounds. He was absolutely outstanding for them. You mentioned Rocco Berry. His name's starting to get thrown around more and more, which I really like. I've really liked this young bloke since his debut. His debut, I think, against the Storm was outstanding. And I think I was telling Warriors NRL fanatics that this is one of your best players. This is one of your future players. And people weren't giving him enough credit. So I think he's had an outstanding season. But I think Reece Walsh nips him just a little bit.
I'm with you. I think Reece Walsh was their best player as well. Their worst player. I know it's hard to bag them because they haven't been home for 2 years, but who do you reckon was their worst player?
I'm personally going to say Chanel Harris-Tavita. I think
really?
I'm going to say Chanel Harris-Tavita. He didn't step up to the game. I expected someone like Jazz Tavaga to be kind of forced out of the side for Chanel to come into that 14 role with someone like Wade Egan moving into the hooker. But there were quite a few games where he was dropped out of the side. The signing of Matt Lodge is also, look, he's a good player on the field, but as someone for the club, there's no way that it was a I can't say he's their worst player. So, yeah, I'm going to lock in Harris Tavita. He didn't perform this year.
I reckon their worst player is one that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. And I reckon this guy made a lot of really, really stupid mistakes this year and a lot of dumb discipline problems. I reckon their worst player was Jazz Tavaga. He just did some really dumb and stupid things. I remember the game against the Cowboys where he did a late shot and got binned. And another game where he did a late shot. Yeah, I'm going to go with Jazz Tavaga. I thought he had a disappointing year. I like him as a player. I think he's very versatile. He can play lock and hooker, but I'm going to go Tavaga as that worst player. Really disappointed with him. Mate, what would you say was their best win, the game against Canberra you were saying before?
Yeah, I think the game against Canberra, to hold on that close in the end. So many games they've let slip, as you mentioned, by 1-12. Oh. But I think that actually winning that game just showed the future of that's what they can do. We've seen that glimpse. So I think that 31-34 really stands out for me.
That was a great comeback and a great game, but I reckon one of their best wins was the one in round 21 against Cronulla, where the Sharks had 16-6 and the Warriors made a comeback and ended up winning 18-16. That game showed me a lot about the Warriors, where I thought, righto, they're down 10. Normally they'd throw the towel in and just like, righto, it's too hard. But they showed some guts in that game, and I thought they did really well. So I'd say that was their best game for them, but the one against Canberra was incredible where they had that great comeback. What about that worst game, bro?
Worst game, probably against Souths. 60-22. Jesus. How can you forget about that one, Warriors fans? I did not expect that scoreline. I think I had Souths by 20, not by 40, especially with how the Warriors were performing. As I mentioned, they were starting to compete against sides. Even if they were losing, they were looking better at that point of the season. They were blown off the park by the Rabbits.
I'll say that worst game was yesterday against the Titans. Jesus Christ, that was bad. 44-0 loss. My God, that was just diabolical. I think anytime you lose 40-0 or 44-0, it's got to be up there. So the Rabbitohs game was pretty bad as well, but I'm going to go 44-0 yesterday against the Gold Coast. They were absolutely diabolical in that game. It just made me sick. Matt Lodge versus Jared Wallace in a boxing match. Hopefully it happens. It'll be very entertaining. Let's move on to the 11th place Dragons. Now, how the Dragons ended up finishing 11th is beyond me. The Dragons, for mine, probably should have finished in the bottom four, but I think the Dragons are at the barbecue still. They're still barbecuing. I don't know why. They had a record of 8 wins and 16 losses as well. 11th spot. They missed the finals by 2 games, which is just crazy. Mate, what do you think of the Dragons season?
For some reason, and I know Parramatta did it as well this year, I would describe the Dragons season as a very Parramatta-like season, where they start really good at the start of the season. They win the first couple of rounds. They're really performing, and people don't expect it every year. But towards the end of the season, they start to drop off, and they're around that finals contention, and they either drop out or they just make it. A lot of people, I reckon you probably thought that the Dragons at one point were going to play finals footy. They definitely looked like they were a finals footy team. I would say that their Parramatta win, 26-12, was their best win of the season. Their defensive efforts, their players really, really stood up at that point. I think with Zach Lomax being out for quite a while, the goal kicking hurt them. There's no way I can say anyone but Corey Norman as their worst player of the season, and I'm really glad he's had his final game of the NRL. Honestly, I think enough's enough. I've wanted him to perform, love him as a person. Enough's enough. It's just embarrassing for the game. The barbecue incident is what killed their season. Yeah. But if we're going off performances, did the Dragons season fail? And I think it's borderline. I don't think they failed as such the whole season. But if we're going into the back half of the season, their attack was terrible. they were dropping balls like Manly in the first 5 rounds. I remember they put 38-12 on Manly in the first couple rounds. They looked awesome, Manly dropping ball. And the Dragons did a reverse later in the year. So I think that the Dragons season was probably worse than the Warriors, in my opinion, just because of that back half of the season. So
I agree.
I'm going to go a 5 out of 10. I think it's worse than the Broncos just because of the back half. If it wasn't for that back half, could have been a great year.
Mate, I reckon the Dragons did well considering the expectation for them was to come last. Everyone had them a wooden spoon. I had them 15th at the start of the year. I didn't want to put them 15th, but I did. But the Dragons, for mine, they just lack that quality halves. I think Corey Norman, like you said, definitely their worst player. Their best player for mine, there's a couple. I think Ben
Ravalawa.
Ravalawa was great. Ben Hunt's probably their best player this year for mine. I want to give a mention to Jack Bird. I thought he was outstanding. Played so many positions. Centre, 5'8", back
Turned
row.
himself into a Mitchell Orbison.
Played fullback at one stage. Look, I'm a big Jack Bird fan. I thought he had a really good year in a team that really struggled. Ben Hunt for mine was their best player. Their worst player was Corey Norman. Their best win, I'm going to go with the one where they came back against the Warriors without down, 18-8 or something. With about, how long will it go? 8 minutes to go. 8
minutes to go, I think.
And then after that, they went and had a barbecue and they ruined their year. But that was their best win for mine, the one against the Warriors. Their worst one, well, I think the one against the Dogs on East, what was it? Queen's birthday. That was out and out embarrassing, to be honest. I'm going to give the Dragons season a 5 out of 10. Anthony Griffin did a really good job, and in my mid-season review, I had Dragons in the top 8. Like I said, they were going to make the finals, and
I reckon
barbecue happened and fell
off. I reckon, unpopular opinion, I reckon their worst game was round 11 against the Sharks, 13-12 loss.
That was a
If you go off that game, the Dragons had so many opportunities to win that, it's not funny. It was a 50-50 coin flip game, but it was all the Dragons. If you go watch the highlights, that was the Dragons' game to win. And somehow they threw it in Cronulla's favour. So I'm going to go round 11 as their worst loss, even though it was by 1 point. It was not a game they should have lost.
I remember watching that game in round 11 between Sharks and Dragons at the pub, and a Dragons fan was at the pub, and when the Sharks kicked the field goal, he literally grabbed a chair, threw it, and he got kicked out of the pub. I don't blame him because Corey Norman for you, but yeah, look, disappointing year for the Dragons. I think Anthony Griffin did a really good job. I really do. I think Griffin did a great job with that roster, considering what they lost. I lost McGuinness. It was a massive loss. Duffy was dropped a lot. I've got to say, I know he's got a bit of a dodgy history and all that, but a player that I want to give a rap to who I thought was great, Jack DeBellin. He came back mid-year. His first couple of games were a bit slow, but gee whiz, he was still playing some really good footy, Jack DeBellin. Seemed like he never lost. I had the game for 2 years. The game changed a lot. It seemed like he never lost a beat, Jack DeBellin. I thought he had a really good back end of year, so it was good to see him rip in. Hopefully, if he can keep his behaviour off the field good, then maybe we'll see him at his best again.
Ramsey had some second-year syndrome, I think. He'll be back next year.
Shocking year from Cody Ramsey. But I'm going to give the Dragons a 5 out of 10. Griffin did a good job with that roster, and I don't think the Dragons will be expected to do a whole lot next year, considering with what they've lost, but maybe they'll prove us all wrong again, and we'll see how they go. But let's move on to the 10th place. Canberra Raiders, record of 10 wins and 14 losses. I'm going to go on record right now and say Canberra are the most disappointing team of the season. They were disappointing. I had them as minor premiers at the start of the year. I am never, ever tipping Canberra to come first again. I don't care if I have Turbo on the trail. I'm never tipping them to come first again. But my God, Canberra, what a terrible year, mate. What'd you think about their season?
If we're going off the full season, it's a really, really disappointing one. Going into the back half of the season, they competed against some of the top sides. They played really good against Melbourne. They played. I know the Titans were struggling early on, besides their win against the Cowboys, I think, which I won't mention again for you. But they beat the Titans 20-4, and they probably could have won by more in that game. I think that overall, everybody, including me, expected them to be in the top 8. You had them top 4, I think, as well, as you mentioned. So I don't know what happened. I know that they've lost John Bateman. I know that mid-season they lost George Williams. I love Josh Hodgson, but he underperformed as a player for me. Really, really underperformed. And Tom Starling is knocking right on his door to start in that number 9 jersey, even though he provides a lot of impact off the bench. Very positive. Corey Harawira-Naera. Really good season. I know trouble towards the end, but a really solid season overall. There were some tight games that they lost, and there were some blowouts. I think their worst loss, even though I think it's embarrassing for Canberra fans to lose to Parramatta at home for the first time since 2005. I'm proud to be an Eel and beat them. But I think as a Canberra fan, that one hurt. So, look, I think that's their worst loss. As for their best win, I'm probably going to go the game against Parramatta, where they ended up winning 10-12. The only thing is they probably could have won this by more, as there was I think it was a Dylan Brown forward pass that wasn't picked up on. So, interesting season. I'm going to put it on par with the Warriors as a team that were fighting for the top 8 and just choked in the end. So, I'm going to give Canberra a 6 out of 10.
I reckon they were absolutely disgusting. They were hard to watch. Love Jack Whiten, but my God. Dally M last year. I think Jack Whiten is the backwards player of the season. Now, he won the Dally M last year. He can't be having a backwards season. He's got to step up. Now, I'd probably go on record to say if I had kept George Williams, then I reckon they do play finals. I reckon they sneak in. I really like Matt Frawley, Sam Williams. They're not the answer to the question, but it just seems like Canberra and Ricky Stewart. I don't know what happened. It was just a really, really bad year. It seems like they're too busy, too busy dealing with players' mental health. It's like they don't care about players' mental health. You know what happened with George Williams? What happened with Curtis Scott? If they had just took care of their players and gave them a bit of time off when they needed it and brought them back when the Raiders needed them in the back end of the year, maybe they would be playing finals this weekend. But no, the Raiders don't seem to care about mental health. But they were shit. They were absolutely shit. Look, I'm going to be pretty harsh on them here. I had high hopes for them. I thought this was maybe the best chance to win the comp this year, and they were the complete opposite. I'm disappointed. I wanted them to do well. Ricky Stewart, I think he may have lost the dressing shed. Things just don't look good down there at the moment. Players are underperforming like Josh Hodgson, Jack Whiten. I know CNK was a big loss, but this was a bad year for Canberra. I'm going to be pretty harsh here. I'm going to give them a 3 out of 10. Disappointing. Really, really disappointing. Their best win, it's so hard to find the best win for them, but the game against Cronulla maybe in round 18, where they won 34 points to 18. Their worst loss, I reckon the game against the Gold Coast, where they played them in Canberra, got beat 44-6. That was absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. I couldn't believe that game. That shocked the hell out of me. But their best player for mine, Sebastian Chris. I
agree. Yep.
I thought he was outstanding. Their worst player, Jack Whiten. Got to go Jack Whiten. 3 out of 10 for Canberra.
I think in the back half of the year, Jack Whiten picked it up, and I know it's pretty harsh to say it, and I love him as a person, but I'm going to go Josh Hodgson. I'm going to go Josh Hodgson. I think that jersey is at risk of being taken away soon.
I think Josh Hodgson needs to go to a different club, move on from Canberra, try something different. I think maybe he's gotten a bit stale in that club. Maybe him and Ricky Stewart. You know, there was a rumor that there was a bit of a falling out between them. Don't know how true that is, but I think the Broncos should throw the checkbook at him.
I think he should go to Newcastle. I think with Connor Watson leaving Newcastle, he could be great off the bench for Newcastle, and there could be moments where Jaden Brayley gets a rest and Josh Hodgson comes in, makes the tackle in those crucial parts of the game, controls the kicking game. Brayley's done a good job at the kicking game, but I think he'd be a good signing for the Knights.
Yeah, I think he would be a good signing for any club, really. He's such a great player, but this year I think injuries and just the way Canberra were playing, that they didn't have any confidence, really. So bad year for Canberra, and out of all the clubs, they are the most disappointing, and I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But the final team that did not play finals in ninth position, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks, record of 10 wins and 14 losses. They missed out on the top 8 because of for and against. They obviously lost John Morris early in the year, which was a bit tough for them. But what do you think of the Sharks season?
I think the Sharks had a pretty good season. I think a lot of people had the Sharks around that bottom 4. Didn't think they had the greatest roster. Didn't think they'd play finals football, which they didn't. But look how close they were. They had some decent wins this year as well. Look, I know that they're not playing finals, so I guess that comes down to a disappointing season after so long of playing finals consecutive. So, look, I think the Sharks had a really, really good season. I think they were better than Canberra, and I think they were better than the Warriors. So I'm probably going to give them a 6.5 out of 10. I know that they didn't win many games without Sean Johnson, but they definitely stepped up. Connor Tracy and I'm having a blank. Who's the other half? Trindle. Tracy and Trindle were combining a nice little combination, and I like what I was seeing from them. I know it probably won't be there next year.
Well.
Pardon? Metcalf. Yeah, he's looking good. I'm going to give them a 6.5 out of 10. I think they had a much better season than both the Warriors and the Raiders.
I think the Sharks were a little bit unlucky not to play finals, but hey, some of those losses to teams like the Bulldogs and the Broncos ended up biting them on the ass, and that's why they didn't make the 8, because they lost to a couple of those bottom sides. But look, I think John Morris getting sacked, everyone thought they were gone. I think I said they were going to be bottom 4 after that, but they ended up doing okay for a while there. I think Josh Hannay did an okay job. I don't think he's a great coach. I think he did a fairly all right job, but some of the young players here are getting better. The likes of Jack Williams, Trindle, Metcalf, Talakai, Tracy, so many good kids coming through there. Will Kennedy. I think next year the Sharks will be a lot better. I think they are one of the teams to watch out for next season. But this year, unlucky to miss out on finals. I'd say their best result for the year for Cronulla, the game against the Tigers, 50-20 in the third last round. That was a great result.
Yeah.
Incredible. Their worst result, there's a couple of them that were pretty ordinary, but the game against Penrith where they got beat 48-0, that was absolutely shocking. That was a bad performance. But the Sharks, I think, I'm glad they missed the finals this year, because I think it's the first time I missed it since 2014. Next year they'll be a lot stronger. I'm going to give the Sharks season a 5 out of 10. I reckon their best player was Will Kennedy. Their worst player, I'm going to go with Josh Dugan. He didn't do a whole lot when he played, Dukes. So I'll go those two, and Sharks to get a solid 5 out of 10.
I thought Jesse Ramian had a really solid season. Look, I've always thought he's up there as a good player, but this was the season for me that he had a breakout season. He had, for me, and I know, look, a lot of people have said for years he's a great player, you got to have more faith in him. But his defense and his strength, he's becoming a really, really good quality center of the game. I'd say outstanding. And then their rookie of the year, Luke Metcalf. I know he only played a couple games, but boy, did I like what I saw of young Luke Metcalf. As I mentioned, I'm going to give them a 6.5 overall. As for their worst player, I'm going to have a look at the lineup. I really don't particularly know.
Chambers? It didn't really impress me much. Chambers.
didn't offer much during the signings. I'm just trying to have a look. I don't know if there is one.
It's hard to say, isn't it?
It is. They had a pretty good year in my opinion.
Tolman was quiet.
Tolman was pretty quiet, yeah. But you'd expect that from a bench forward. Yeah. He never really started and got going.
Yeah. Righto. Let's move on to the Gold Coast. Now, I'm not even going to get into it. We all know what I said at the start of the year. I'm copping it everywhere. The tattoo. Let's not talk about that. Fucking piece of shit. Titans make the 8. They finished the season with 10 wins and 14 losses. They're lucky to fucking be there, to be honest. But they got in. Fair play to them. Jesus Christ. Don't even want to talk about it. Mate, what do you think about their season?
Yeah, I think it's the same as the Sharks. I think there were some games that they had some good performances. They also had some very bad ones. Lucky to be in the top 8 spot. It was very close to being Sharks 7th, Knights 7th, Sharks 8th, and Titans 9th, just like last year, which would have been absolutely crazy to have 7th, 8th, and 9th back-to-back seasons. There were some decent results. That Canberra one, 44-6, really good performance from the Gold Coast there. I'd even say their game against Brisbane, the first one, 28-16. That showed just how good their signing of David Fifita was. I think he scored a hat-trick that game. I can see electrical dust there. He was about to say what I'm just about to say. Jaden Campbell, absolute revelation. Where has he been all this time? And he mentioned Toby Sexton, who it was great to see him have a run as well. Look, I think they had a really solid season. I'd probably put them on par with the Sharks just because there were a little bit of inconsistency with the club as well, but very happy for them to play finals for the first time in 5 years, is it? Or 4? 5 years.
2016.
So 5. 5. I'm going to go a 6.5 out of 10 for the Titans, above half.
Well done, Titans. You proved me wrong. I bashed the shit out of them this year, as everyone would know. They did well. They got in the 8. I'm going to say the Titans' best result this year was the one against Canberra, where they just absolutely belted and pumped them 44-6. That was impressive. And their worst performance, probably the game against Manly, the first one, where Turbo returned. I think it was what was the score there? 36-0. That was crazy. Turbo just come back, and I think it was at Mudgee or something. It was somewhere. Glenwillow Park. It was at some ground. Turbo went nuts, and the Titans were in absolute shock. I'll say that was Titans' worst game. Their best player, obviously a few of them to talk about. There's a lot of them you can say who played well for them, but I'm going to go with Moe Fotuaika. He was outstanding all season. He is my Titans player of the year. I thought he was incredible. Worst player of the year for the Titans. I could probably name 2 of them. I wasn't really impressed with Patrick Herbert. I don't think he did a whole lot for mine. I'm not really a big fan of Patrick Herbert. And the obvious one I'm going to go with is Ash Taylor. He didn't do anything all year. Yeah, he did have a couple of decent games at the back end of the year, but you look at it from a whole season point of view. Toby Sexton carried his ass for a while. Fogarty carried his ass for a while. Taylor's the experienced one of the lot. Didn't show me a whole lot, to be honest, but I'd say Taylor and what was his name? Fucking Herbert were their worst.
You know who had a really good year that hasn't gotten enough credit?
Who?
Jared Wallace.
Yes.
Jared Wallace had one of the best seasons I've seen in years. He's had a lot of rugby league under his name. He was outstanding in 2021.
He had a really good year. And another player that doesn't get much mention as well is Beau Fermor. Thought he did a good job too. Mate, just quickly, before you talk more about the Titans, what would you rate David Fifita's season? A lot of people are talking him up. A lot of people are bashing him. Where do you rate Fifita's season?
I'm going to go with a 7 to a 7 to an 8. I would probably go closer to a 7. I think he had a really good season. It's just that, as you mentioned, Mo and the consistency. David Fafita was shut down. And you've got to expect that. Teams match up against each other. There were some teams that were able to shut David down, but he's on some big money. There were some games where he was extremely quiet. He was scoring hat tricks and scoring tries for fun at the start of the year. So, look, I think it's a good signing, good year, not a fantastic year. So I reckon a 7.
I'm going to give him a 5 only because there were a lot of games this year where he would score 1 or 2 tries and then he'll go quiet. And then another game, he'll have a 10-minute period where he'll go berserk. And then the rest of the 60 minutes, he'll just go back and go, no. Don't give me the ball. I'll give him a 5 out of 10. Decent year. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. Mate, what would you say was their best win?
Oh, definitely the one against the Raiders. Oh, I almost want to say yesterday. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to say yesterday. I'm going to say 44-0. I think that they're young guns, and without some of their key players, AJ Brimson, even though you don't rate him and I don't really rate him, Ash Taylor is definitely a crucial part of their team, and for him not to be playing says a lot about the side. For David Fafita to be coming off the bench, not even starting as well, for Beau Fermor to be in that starting side, I reckon yesterday was the Titans' best win of the season.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. The Titans have got a few things to work on. They are playing finals. We'll see how they go against the Roosters on Saturday, but their years are past mark. I'm giving them a 5.5 out of 10. They did well, and you know, I've been bashing them all year, but Titans fans out there, all the best. They did well. They proved me wrong. Let's move on to the next team in 7th position. Newcastle Knights, 12 wins, 12 losses, 7th position. I think I had him at 7th or 6th. I had him somewhere around that. You had him in the top 4, I believe, from memory.
I had them in the top 4 as a preseason prediction last year. When I put out my proper predictions for the year, though, I had them in 7th position. I had Titans in 8th, these guys in 7th, and I think I had... Did I have the Dragons in 9th? Maybe the Dragons in 9th.
What do you think of Newcastle's season?
I think their forward pack was impressive. I think Mitch Barnett had a good season. Tyson Frizzell was a good buy, but like Fafita, I think
it was quiet.
Fafita was better. Pardon?
I think Frizzell was a bit disappointing. I thought it was quiet.
I was going to say, I think that there were some moments like Fafita. Fafita was better. Had some good moments, but definitely stood back and was quiet for the most part. Clemmer didn't offer much. He's had 2 good seasons now at the Knights, so didn't offer much this year. Ponga spent a bit of time on the sidelines. For them to be where they are is a pretty good effort. Jack Johns, nice season, couple games from him, young Matty Johns' son. Are they lucky to be playing finals? Maybe, because I think the Sharks were giving them a bit of a run for their money throughout the entire season. I'm just trying to think of I think their worst loss was the game against the Dragons when they were up 6 points to 7 at halftime. Really tight contest. They were in the fight. And in that game, unfortunately, I think 4 players were taken off injured, so it was becoming a reserve grade Knights side, and the Dragons belted them. And Tarek Sims scored 2 charge down tries. So I think it's very disappointing for Knights fans, that 9-point loss there in round 4.
Yeah.
As for the best win, I would have to say their win against the Manly Sea Eagles in round 12, 18-10.
That was a brave win. That was a gutsy win.
That was a good win.
I thought you were going to say the Knights and Cowboys game where they murdered us. I was waiting for it. Knights, I think they deserve to play finals. I think they did well. Mitchell Pearce was out for a while as well. They had a lot of injuries, but Adam O'Brien deserves a rap. You know, it's his 2nd year as head coach. He has a 100% record in getting them to the finals. So Adam O'Brien goes a bit under the radar for the coaches in the competition. I thought he did a really good job with all the injuries and stuff, and a lot of young players coming through. I thought Brodie Jones had a good year as well. I'm really liking him as a player. He's so versatile. He can play back row and center. Starting a lot. I think he's becoming a good player. He'll be hot property if he ends up on the market. He'll be hot property. But as for the Knights' best win, I think it's the one against the Cowboys where they won 38-0. That was very, very dominant. Absolutely destroyed us. I'd say their worst result, though, I think the game against the Roosters in round 19 where they led 8-0 and got blown off the park 28-8. That was pretty disappointing. I thought that was a game where they could have won, but they didn't get the job done. I'm going to give the Newcastle Knights season a 6.5 out of 10. They made the finals again, same spot as last year. I think they did well to get there too. So I'll give them a 6.5 out of 10. Their best player, I'll go Barnett. I'll go
Barnett as well.
I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a future Origin player. He's an absolute weapon. I think he was their best player. Their worst player.
I'm going Tex Hoy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. This might be unpopular, and I don't know if anyone will agree with this, but I reckon their worst player was Kurt Mann. Really did not like him at all this year. I know when he was in the halves, he was a bit over the place. In the centers, he doesn't suit center. He's just playing there because
I like him at hooker. I like him at hooker. He had a really good season. I think it was last year, at the start of the year at hooker. I think he had a good season at hooker, and I think he's really dropped off in form.
Look, I tell you, I love the Knights. Their forward pack for mine, when they're all fully fit, their forward pack is a top 6 forward pack. So much quality. Safidi brothers, Barnett, Frizzell, Watson, Sawasa Su off the bench, Clemmer, Josh King did a good job this year, and Brodie Jones. Some really good, Lachlan Fitzgibbon as well. So many good forwards there for the Knights, but I think
that's why I had them top 4 pre-season. I thought that forward pack would actually be able to stand up, but they didn't have the outside backs behind them to do it.
I think Jake Cliffords made a big difference to them as well in the halves, taking a bit of pressure off Pearce and Ponga. So good year for the Knights. We'll see how they go against your boys, Parramatta, on the elimination final on Sunday. But Knights have had a pretty good year and definitely a pass mark. I'll give them a 6.5. Let's move on to the next team, which is your boys, Parramatta. They had a good year, 15 wins, 9 losses. Mate, what did you think of the Parramatta Eels season?
As a Parramatta fan, I feel like it's harsh to do this, but I'm probably going to put them on par with the Sharks, around that 6.5 mark. And I would go as far as saying inconsistency that Cronulla may have had a better year than us, even though they're not playing finals. This year was a really, really strange one for me. There were some really good wins, but when we came against the top sides, which I expected some of the top sides to beat us. Not all of them, though. Our worst loss for me, and I was there, I was on the field for the first 5 minutes, by the way, against the Dragons, 28-6. Now, even if the scoreline was close, even if it was 20-14 or something, or 20-18, we lost that game, if that happened, we were belted. Our forwards were tired. We made the Dragons look like minor premiers, and we looked flat as anything after starting the season impressively, beating Melbourne Storm in round 2, which was one of our best wins of the season. It was a great game in the rain, not much drop ball, not much error. Beating Canberra in Canberra was probably another highlight. I loved going down to that one, but it doesn't feel like much because Canberra were not what they were the last 3 years. I think 2018 they didn't play finals, but they came close. 19 grand final and 2020 really good. So they've been very inconsistent. They had a decent win against the Roosters, who were a little bit under strength in a very controversial game, thanks to Dylan Brown. I expected us to lose as soon as who died from Manly? Bob Fulton.
Yep.
They were up for Bob Fulton. So look, it was an up and down year, and I think it's on par with the Sharks. We were able to score points early on once again and lost our attack in the back half of the season. I think our best win is probably against the Storm, 22-10. Now, I want to say it's the one against the rain. I want to say it's the one in the rain. I want to say it's so bad. But at the same time, Melbourne Storm were chasing the most wins in NRL history. Yeah. And everybody wrote Parramatta off. Melbourne Storm were full strength. And Parramatta turned up and belted Melbourne. They may have won by only 12, but in regards to the physicality of the match, I think it was their best game. I think our best player, I think Gutherson was really, really quiet this year. I think he's been really good the last couple of years. I think our best player is Isaiah Papali'i. I'm shocked to say it. I never would have picked him starting in the side. He would have been like a bench Ray Stone all year for me. So crazy to think that. As for our worst player, he had some good moments, but our worst player for me is Sean Lane for 2021.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. I thought Sean Lane was good when he went to the middle on an edge. Not so good, but he was a bit underwhelming this year. There's no doubt about that. Parramatta, I think I had them about 6, so they finished where I thought they would. They just need to find a way to win those big games under pressure. Obviously, they beat Melbourne, which was good, but that's pretty much all they beat. They lost to Penrith twice, Manly twice. I think they lost Manly twice, didn't they?
56-10 and 28 to 6. No, was it 28-6? Actually, it might have been the same score. We were beaten by the Dragons the same. Oh, no, Dragons was 26-12. Yeah, go on.
They have had some good moments. I think the Eels are a team where they can get to the finals, but we don't know how they'll go to the next level. They always start well, like the Dragons, but the back, their middle half or the back end of the year was a bit disappointing. I'm going to say the Parramatta Eels' best win was the one against Melbourne the other week. That was incredible, where they belted them 22-10. Their worst game, got to be round 20 against the Roosters, 28-zip in the wet. That was so bad. That was a shocker. Their best player, I was going to say Reid Marnie, but he hasn't played enough footy. He was at the start of the year, he was the Eels. I'd say their best player was probably Isaiah Papali'i as well. Junior Pula had a pretty good year as well, I thought. Their worst player, there's a couple you can name. Ferguson had some really strange moments.
That's just what he is.
Yeah. Dylan Brown was a bit backwards this year, I thought. But I'm going to go with Opacek. I don't understand it. I don't think he'll play centre again for Parramatta. Panasini's the future. I think he has to be there going forward. Opacek, I think the game against Melbourne back in round 2 where he almost cost Parramatta 3 or 4 times in the last minute. I was going, what are you doing, Opacek? You're going to cost him the game. But I think Opacek was their worst. I think Papali'i was their best. I'll give the Eels a 6.5 out of 10. They make the finals again. They had a pretty good year. Look, it's going to be interesting to see how they go in the finals. Obviously, against Newcastle, who have been a bit up and down. But overall, they definitely are a pass mark. But
do you think if they come up against Melbourne in finals, do you think that finals intensity and that experience of Melbourne beats them? Or do you think this record of Parramatta winning 3 of their last 4 against Melbourne shows that? Because we know that NRL is about teams competing against each other, and we see players matching up, the bodies of them and the skills of them. And I'm not saying Parramatta are more skilled than Melbourne, but we seem to match up really well against them. So it's going to be really interesting if we come up against each other once again in the finals.
Well, I think Parramatta will be very happy with the finals draw because they avoid Melbourne, unless Melbourne get through to the prelim and Parramatta go through Newcastle and Penrith or South. But they could beat Melbourne again. They definitely could, but I can't remember the last time someone beat Melbourne 3 times in a season. I can't remember it. I'll have to ring out rugby league history and ask him about that because I'm sure he would know. But pretty good year for Parramatta. I think they've done well. Definitely a pass mark, and the best win had to be the one against Melbourne. That was incredible. So good year for the Eels, and looking forward to seeing how they go in the finals. Should be interesting. Let's move on to the 5th place Roosters. 16 wins, 8 losses, 80% of the salary cap out. They lost the Morris brothers, Cordner, Friend, Keary, Collins. Radley suspended a lot. Crichton suspended a lot. They had so much shit go on this year. I can't believe that they finished 5th. Mate, what do you think about the Roosters season? I thought it was incredible.
Oh, absolutely incredible. Straight off the bat, I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
They may have finished in 5th position. And I think Melbourne probably get that minor premiership, but full strength Roosters, I had the minor premiers at the start of the year. They were my minor premiers. I had the Sydney Roosters. And I could still have them. I had the Roosters finishing minor premiers and going out in straight sets in finals. So really interesting that they face the Titans, who really good attacking side but poor defense. They had some really good games this year. They did have some bad losses. I think a bad one against Penrith quite early, around the halfway mark at the start of the season, was one of their worst. I think they scored the first try and then, what was it, 40-10 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
A pretty bad loss for them. Plenty of injuries, plenty of shining lights. I think it's a battle between James Tedesco and Joseph Manu for that player position of the year. Crichton and Tupanua stepped up, really consistent. They've got some good young guns coming through. And the rookie of the year, in my opinion, in Sam Walker. I think he had a fantastic season. I think in the back half of the season, Reece Walsh may have overtaken him in regards to quality of a player. I think if we're going off the whole season, though, I'm going to go Sam Walker as the rookie of the year. And as I mentioned, best player, Manu or Tedesco.
Yeah. The Roosters for mine, I thought with all the injuries, all the suspensions to some of their big name players, the fact that they even got into 5th position on the ladder just shows how good of a coach that Trent Robinson is. Such a world-class coach. If Melbourne didn't have that winning streak, Robinson would have to be coach of the year. I think if Roosters made top 4, Robinson would have been coach of the year. That's what I think anyway. But Roosters for mine, great season. 8 out of 10 for mine. The best player. Plenty of good players. But I'm going to go with Jared Waerea-Hargreaves. I thought he was outstanding. In my opinion, it's a 2-horse race between him and Payne Haas for the best prop in the game, along with Fisher Harris as well. But he was outstanding this year, Hargreaves. Obviously, Tedesco and Manu were very good as well. Satili Tupanua, Crichton, outstanding. But Roosters, well-deserved this year. I can't believe how good they've gone. Their best win, there's a few of them that have been very good, but I'm going to go back to Anzac Day against the Dragons. They did really well in that game. They pumped them, which I thought maybe it would have been a tight game, but I think Anzac Day was a good one for them over the Dragons. And their worst result, I think the one against the Storm where they were beaten 46 points to 0. That was a pretty tough loss for them. But great year from the Roosters. Best player, I'm going to go with Jared Waerea-Hargreaves. Their worst player, it's very hard to pick one because of how gutsy they were, but this is going to be very, very unpopular. I reckon this bloke was very quiet for a lot of the season. I think he had more quiet and average games compared to good games. Daniel Tupou.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. I think I'd agree.
Quiet.
To go from Origin to what he did,
Yeah,
pretty backwards year.
definitely backwards. And it's disappointing because he's such a good target on that wing. So Tupou for mine was our worst player. And it's crazy to say that because he's such a great player, but This year, I thought he was really, really down on form.
I think one of their best wins of the year was against the Titans to hold on 35-34.
That game. Insane.
Really crazy game where the Titans came back to, I think they led them at one point, and the Roosters. They did. And the Roosters snatched it 35-34, unforgettable. And then I think that following week when they were beaten by Penrith 38-12 is their worst loss. But that one against Melbourne 46-0, you're not wrong. That definitely would have hurt them.
I also want to give a rap to another player who I thought really stepped up in the absence of Luke Keary. I thought Drew Hutchison did a really good job. A lot of people bag him, but I thought in a team that had a lot of injuries, I thought Hutchison had a really good year. I thought he stepped up. I thought his last 4 weeks of the season going into the finals this weekend, I thought he's been playing really well, Hutchison. So good to see. But the Chooks definitely overachieved this year, and they've done well for themselves. No matter what happens in the finals, they can give themselves a good tap on the back. And I'll tell you right now, next year, when they get their players back, they're going to be a problem for the competition. Dare I say, they would be in the top 3 favourites next year when they get their full team back. So whether you like the Roosters or you hate them, beware, because next year they are going to be back better than ever. Let's move on to the other side, the top 4. 4th place. Well, do you call it Manly? Do you call it Tom Trbojevic? Wow. Manly were 0-4 to start the year. They finished in the top 4 with, 16 wins and 8 losses. All I can say is Tom Trbojevic. Wow.
I've got no words. This team has proven me wrong completely. I think I had them. No, I had Manly in 9th. That's right. I had Manly in 9th. I had them just outside the 8. I think in my pre-season prediction, I had them in 8th. But I just thought they wouldn't win enough games to sneak into the 8. But this is the best game of not just Tom Trbojevic this season, but of any fullback in a long time. Tedesco's been named as the best fullback for multiple years. He's gotten that origin spot. Tommy Turbo is amazing. Everyone's comparing this season to Jared Haynes' season back in 2009. And let's see if he takes Manly all the way to the grand final, because he can do it.
Oh, no,
I'm on that Manly. I want Parramatta to win, but I'm on that Manly train.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, if Manly win the comp, I will seriously declare it as the greatest individual season from a player that I've ever seen. If they win it, it'll be unbelievable. But, for mine, Manly are the most surprising team of the year. I did not have them in my top 8. I had them about 10th, 11th, or something at the start of the year. Manly, for mine, are the most surprising team of the year. They have made the top 4. Turbo, I knew he was a great player. I knew he was capable of being incredible. But from what I've seen this year, he has gone to a whole new level. He is in his peak as we speak, and he's only going to get better as well, which is frightening. So, seriously, if Manly don't win it this year, they're going to win it in the next 2 years at least. Turbo, best player in the world. Manly have done incredible this year.
9 out of 10.
Obviously, Turbo was their best player. Who would you say was their worst? It's hard to pick, isn't it?
It's very hard to pick. It's very, very hard to pick. I would probably say Lachlan Croker, even though he had some decent game, fill in a hooker, score some tries. Their forward pack was outstanding. Tapau, Olakalatu, Paseka. Paseka's a beast, man. He's fantastic. Their centres in Brad Parker, they've got so much depth in their squad. So I don't think there is a worse player, but I'd say Lachlan Croker. And then I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 because I think there were still some games that they shockingly lost, like that one against the Knights.
Yeah, that was
so close to a perfect season for these Eagles.
Well, if I had have started the year well, they could have been minor premiers possibly. I could have, because the only team to beat Turbo was Penrith and Melbourne. So it's very interesting. But look, best player obviously Turbo. Worst player, it'll be unpopular, but I'm going to go Brad Parker. seriously, out of all the players in that Manly 13 who start every week, Brad Parker is the weak link for that side going forward, and Moses Sully adds so much more for mine. So I reckon Brad Parker has been disappointing. Their best win, they've had a lot of them that have been incredible, absolutely incredible. I'll say their best win. Well, I reckon the one against Parramatta around 22 against Parramatta was pretty incredible. They destroyed the Eels. They absolutely destroyed them. Their worst game, you've got to go back to the first 4 rounds and pick one from there. I'll say round 1 against the Roosters. That was pretty poor, 46-4 loss. But incredible year from Manly. Turbo's on another level. I'm going to give their year a solid 8.5 out of 10. It would have been a 9 or a 10 if I had got top 2. But what a year they've had.
I reckon their best game was against the Titans. I think that game where they were down 24-8, and I knew that I believed in them. I had big money on Manly that game. I had Manly 13 plus. A lot of people did, but Titans gave it to them. I think it was Jaden Campbell's debut. I think it could have been Jaden Campbell's debut that game. And just, I've got no words. Ruben Garrick scores 3. Tom Trbojevic scored 2. Jason Saab scored 3. The whole Manly team, just a massive effort. And yes, Turbo was their best player, but so was Ruben Garrick. He broke records this year. He broke records. Don't you forget that.
Another player that I want to give a rap to as well, who I think he's close to buy of the year. You probably have to go through it and have a look, but Kieran Foran this year, he was great. He stayed injury-free. I think he missed 3 or 4 games out of the whole year. He's playing his role on that left-hand side with Schuster. I thought he had a great year, Kieran Foran. He could be buy of the year. It might be. But Manly, great year from them, and I'm so keen for them in the finals. When they played Melbourne Friday night, probably the biggest game of the finals series, so really keen. See how they go. They have done incredible, Manly. Third place, the Rabbits. They finished with a record of 20 wins and 4 losses. The Bunnies, good year from them. I've had a few games where they were a bit blah, but overall, pretty good year from the Bunnies, mate. What are your thoughts on their season?
I'm going to give their rating what I had them originally on the ladder, a 7. I had these guys dropping off, playing finals. I think they had a really good year. The only bad thing is that they had 50 put on them, both against Melbourne and Penrith, 2 sides that are easily heavyweight favourites, and they're going to compete against them. We saw them go down to the Penrith Panthers just a few weeks ago, and I was quite disappointed with them in that game. I believe I think I tipped the Rabbits 13 plus, and they came out firing. They came out firing. They were up 10-0. I don't think the Rabbits can win the premiership this year. I think they can definitely make another prelim this year. Not sure if they can play in the grand final, but as for the regular season, they were outstanding. Latrell was great. I think their best player is Cody Walker. I think Cody Walker has had an outstanding season. Most try assist as well. Amazing season for the most part. Just that they couldn't compete with the heavyweight. Yeah, I'm going a 7 out of 10.
Mate, South Sydney, they have done very, very well. So many quality players in that side. I'm going to give the Rabbitohs season an 8 out of 10. They've done very, very well to get where they are. Wayne Bennett's got a plan for the final, so we'll see how they go. But South for mine, 8 out of 10. Their best player, Cody Walker, by an absolute mile. He, in my opinion, is the best 5'8" in the game right now. And you know what? It's not even close. It's not even close. Cody Walker, best 5'8" by a country mile. He is unbelievable. Some of the stuff he does in the field, it's just unbelievable. But if I had to pick a worst player for him, everyone's going to disagree. Everyone's going to disagree. You want to have a guess?
Campbell Graham?
Damien Cook. Damien Cook. Backward season from Damien Cook. Very quiet. Nowhere near his best. I'm just disappointed in Damien Cook. He just doesn't run the ball in dummy half anymore. He gets the ball, he passes it. He doesn't run anymore. I haven't seen Damien Cook get out of dummy half and make a dash, a good line break for quite some time now. So Damien Cook needs to really step up in this final series because I reckon he's been down on form. Ever since State of Origin, I haven't been impressed. I think he was lucky to play Origin. People won't agree, and that's fine. But I think Cookie's been really disappointing this year. I really do. In the chats, some of them are disagreeing, but that's all right. I think he's been disappointing. You know, obviously I watch every game and review every game, but I can't remember the last time I gave Damien Cook a top 3 rating from a game. He has been really disappointing. So I hope he kills it in the finals because he needs to with Latrell being out. But I'd say South Sydney's best win of the season. There's a few to choose from. I'd say their worst game was against Melbourne when I beat 50-zip. That was their worst. I'd say their best, probably the game against the Roosters a couple of weeks ago against the Roosters where they beat them 54-12. I know Roosters had a lot of players out, but I'm gonna say that one.
I'm going to say their worst loss was against Penrith. They were full strength. I think Adam Reynolds was out for that game against Melbourne, so I expected Melbourne to win well. Another game that could be considered their best, even though their defence wasn't great, was their very brave win against the Titans in a fantastic game, 40 points to 30. They were down at half-time, definitely not out. Crazy game where the Bunnies took it home. But I think their worst loss has to be that game against Penrith, and it proved a lot for me. And I was really looking forward to the rematch. And Penrith, I'm looking forward to this weekend. It's another rematch. We saw a little taste of it this year, and Penrith won both times. So can these Rabbitohs, who were red-hot favourites at the start of the year, beat Penrith? That's what I want to see. Can it happen?
I'm looking forward to seeing how Souths go in the final series, but who would you say is their worst player? I know it's hard to pick, but who would you say?
I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. And I had them 7th, so I should have somebody considering how good they were, but I don't know.
There's not many to choose from because a lot of them were good.
I think.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Who was there? No, Cameron Murray was good. Liam Knight was a bit average. Liam Knight has been pretty good in recent seasons, and I think Hosty, Burgess and players like that stood up and took that jersey away from him. So I'm going to go Liam Knight.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Let's move on to the second place Panthers. Well, what a year they've had. 21 wins, 3 losses. Great year from Penrith. Mate, what are your thoughts on this season?
They're having a great season, and they still are. At full strength, they are a really good side. Even though that was a Parramatta reserve grade, Parramatta competed with them in the first half. You've got to say that the Penrith were belting them. Their forward pack of Fisher Harris. Kickout, is Kickout their worst player this year? Kickout did not offer anything for mine. I love him as a player, but I don't know if he offered enough this year for them. I'm going to give their season a 9 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think that their best win. I'm just trying to think.
The worst player kick out. Oh, you reckon?
I'm trying to think. What do you think?
It's so hard to pick someone, but
I'd say their best player was Nathan Cleary. I think Fisher Harris,
Cleary, no doubt.
Fisher Harris is in talks, but I think Nathan Cleary takes it.
Yeah, look, I think Kickout did have a lot of quiet moments. Some people would argue, what's his name?
Charlie Staines. Charlie Staines, you're the worst player of the year. There you go.
Yeah, Charlie Staines was poor, wasn't he?
Charlie Staines.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah,
Tyrone May, I hate him.
Yeah, Tyrone May's a bit of an up and down character, but
Yeah,
Charlie Staines, I'm with you.
I'm on a
Charlie
YouTube
Staines,
conference.
Charlie
Is everyone
Staines
going to
was
bed?
really, really poor. The
I've got
best
to
player
jump
was
off
Nathan
soon,
Cleary.
man. Everyone's going to bed in my house. I've got to jump off in a minute. We'll
Yeah, we
go
got one
two
more
more.
team to go after this.
Sorry.
One more team. Brian Toto, another one who had a really good year. I'll give Penrith a 9 out of 10. The best win, I'll say the one against Melbourne in round 3. That was incredible. And the worst one, probably the game against the Storm in round 20. They did have to half the team out, but I'd say that would have been the one as well. Anything else on the Panthers?
One of their best wins was in round 21 quite recently against the Roosters. Matt Burton stepping up into that 5/8 role with Jerome Luai, and then some of their pickups for the season in Paul Momorowski. Really good game from him. So I really rate that game. And then the one you mentioned against Melbourne, definitely a great one as well.
And the final team, the Melbourne Storm, 21 wins, 3 losses, 19-game win streak. Mate, what do you think of that season?
Fantastic. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Really?
They may not have, 10 out of 10. They may not have gotten that record, but they've broken so many other records. Most points scored in a regular season, tied that consecutive record of 40 years of the most wins in a consecutive season. So, look, I think their season was absolutely perfect. They got the minor premiership. It was pretty close towards the end there. I think Pappenhausen has shown better signs and he spent a lot of time out, so it's pretty harsh to say that he had a backwards year, but I think I'm expecting more from him. I think they had a great season.
I'll give Melbourne 9.5 out of 10. Incredible year. I've done well once again. I'd say their best player was Nico Hines, maybe. And their worst player, Kafusi. Didn't do anything, Kafusi. I thought he was poor. Their best win of the season. I've had a lot of incredible wins. I'd say the one against Manly in round 21 was pretty impressive because I know it was lucky. It was a lucky win. They had a lot of lucky tries, but that they are the only team that have really kept Turbo a bit quiet. So I'd say that was the best win for them. The worst one for Melbourne, probably the one against Parramatta in round 24. That was their worst game. That was shocking. What about you?
Oh, I'd agree. I think that game was their worst, and then their best win. If you're going off points, it's the game against the Tigers, but the Tigers were so bad that it didn't even make Melbourne look that good. So there's a few. Just trying to have a look at the draw now. We'll get it up.
Definitely a good year
They
for Melbourne.
conceded a few points in quite a few games. That's an issue that they need to fix.
That's what I've been saying. They got to sort out that side with Remus Smith and Jules Jennings because every team that plays them now, like Manly, that's all they'll do. They'll attack that side.
You know what? I'm going to say their best win was against Canberra, 16-26. They were able to hold on in that game. Canberra competed with them. Canberra almost beat them. Really good job. Clinical Melbourne side. Got it done in the end.
Yeah. Well, overall, I think it's been a pretty good year for the NRL. I think the gap between the top 4 and the bottom has been quite big, but I don't think it's the top 4 to the bottom 8. I don't think it's as big as what everyone says. Like, Newcastle can beat teams like, on their day. Like, I reckon Newcastle could beat the Roosters. I reckon, I don't think the gap's as big as what it is, mate. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I'm all good. Thank you for having me on, though. I appreciate it. It's good to
bro.
talk about the regular season. We'll try and come up with something else for the fans across the off season as well for everyone.
Thanks everyone that tuned in. It went a bit longer than I thought, but hey, we got through it. Spoke about everyone's team, and we gave our honest opinion on them. So it's been good. But guys, if you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. Go check out Entertainers on YouTube if you haven't already. If you don't subscribe, something bad might happen to you. I don't know. Who knows? But guys, we're getting out of here. Have a good Monday night. Thanks for tuning in, and see you guys in the next one.